Every time I do a client inquiry call, it takes about 5 minutes for the word narcissist to appear. Not we argue a lot, not I feel unsafe, not I'm walking on eggshells, straight to they're a narcissist. I take a deep breath, then I jump in with okay, unless they've been clinically diagnosed, we're just gonna park that label. And if you're Googling, is my partner a narcissist, this is gonna help you stop spiraling and start protecting yourself. Not because I'm trying to be awkward, and absolutely not because I'm defending them, but because that label is dangerous. You see, once you decide somebody is a narcissist, your brain starts doing what brains do best. It filters for evidence, it ignores anything that doesn't match, and it turns your relationship into a courtroom. And now you're not solving any problems, you're just collecting screenshots as evidence. So here's what you'll discover in this week's podcast episode: why narcissist has become the internet's favourite label and why it can trap you, the difference between narcissistic traits under stress and narcissistic personality disorder, so NPD, why checklists and TikTok tests can't replace a real differential diagnosis, the only test that matters in real life, so the microboundary test, and what to watch for, some copy and paste scripts to set boundaries without panic, over-explaining or self-abandoning, how to handle entitlement or control patterns safely, so jade, consequences, grey rock and distance, when nuance is dangerous, how to spot when it's time to protect yourself and leave. So there you are, analysing every single action, word and past misdeed positive that you've finally figured out what's going on and why things just won't work. You're doing whatever you can to separate yourself from them, falling into that category trap that separates them from you. And the truly sad thing is that we only need a sliver of information to shape a belief about a person, experience or situation, but need a giant haul to overturn this belief, even if it was completely wrong. So if you've ever had a conversation with somebody on the other side of the fence about something, you'll understand exactly what I mean. And we become even more dogged in our beliefs if it's something which we've wrapped into our identity and feel it deep in our soul, so to speak. So take Brexit, for example. Even 10 years on, there's a dividing line between people who voted for Brexit and those who voted for reform. Each one still trying to one up the other as to why they were right and the other person is wrong. And the reality is, people don't need another spot the narcissist checklist. You don't need another TikTok run test. You just need to know this: narcissism is not a Disney villain diagnosis. It's a personality style on a spectrum. And we all have narcissistic traits. It's literally part of how humans survive. And in childhood, we have to be self-focused. If we didn't put ourselves first, we wouldn't fight for our needs. That me first wiring is not proof that you or they are evil. And the difference is, with a healthy development, we develop empathy, embrace social cohesion, and integrate the ability to regulate ourselves. But with early trauma, some people don't fully leave that childlike state, which means they're not automatically monsters. They're quite often just stuck. So let's be blunt for a minute. A lot of the narcissist expert content online is created by people who've never stepped into clinical practice, never studied child development, and don't understand the full spectrum of human behaviour. They've just read a blog post, watched a few videos, and now they're diagnosing your husband because he was a dick in Tesco's, which is absolutely fine. This is not me suggesting people who've never studied these things shouldn't talk about them, but we just need to be careful about how much weight we put behind what they're saying, especially when you understand something that nobody else really likes to admit. Even clinical diagnosis contains subjectivity and can be very, very wrong. It's still a human observing another human and making a judgment formed on patterns that they've witnessed. Yes, they quite often run a battery of psychometric tests plus loads of other things behind the scenes, and will still put the brakes on stamping people with labels until they're 100% confident. But they're still humans, and humans are infallible, and if the clinician is having a bad day, then their judgment will be impaired. And this is why I'm really cautious with labels. In fact, when I first started working in this field, I decided I was going to be anti-label and anti-diagnosis because I know how dangerous they can be, especially if applied incorrectly. Plus, I'm not ashamed to admit that I have bias. Oh, and you do too. We all do. Now, after attempting to explain this and trying to steer the conversation conversation back to where it matters on them, not on the other in their life, their usual response is, but Katie, I've read the list. They tick every single box. Cool. So let's slow down and have a proper look at that sacred DSM checklist that everybody's waving around like it's a Hogwarts sorting hat for villains. So yes, clinicians have a list, and yes, it includes things like grandiosity, fantasies of unlimited success, belief they're special and should only mix with other special people, constant need for admiration, sense of entitlement, exploiting others, lack of empathy, envy and belief that everybody's envious of them, arrogance and or haughtiness. Plus, it all has to show up as a persistent pattern by early adulthood, not just when life gets hard. And here's the reality check that the internet conveniently forgets. Stress turns most of us into temporary arseholes. Now, it doesn't automatically mean we've got a full-blown personality disorder. So let me translate that fancy clinical list into what it actually looks like on a random Tuesday when you're stressed, exhausted, or quietly falling apart because life. So exaggerated sense of importance. Your partner snaps, I'm the only one holding this family together, after a brutal week at work where their boss publicly humiliated them. Translation, their nervous system is screaming, I'm not enough, and they're desperately seeking validation of their self-worth. Preoccupation with fantasies of success. So they're doom scrolling LinkedIn at 1 a.m. muttering about how they should be further along by now. This is not because they're secretly planning world domination, but because their redundancy notice just landed and their identity is shattered, like that antique mirror you promised your nan you'd look after. Belief they're special and unique. No one else understands what I'm going through, said while sulking because you dared to suggest therapy. Or, maybe they actually are dealing with something most people haven't experienced, because trauma doesn't always come with a group chat. Need for unconditional admiration. They get prickly when you don't immediately praise the slightly burnt roast they spent 2 hours on after a 12-hour shift. Congrats, you just witnessed a human whose tank is empty, who's panicking. They're no longer lovable if they're not performing. Sense of entitlement. Why do I have to do the bins when I've had the worst day ever? Said by someone who's been the default parent, breadwinner and emotional regulator for months while you've been quietly drowning too. Entitled or just emotionally bankrupt and bad at asking for help. Exploiting others. They ask you to cancel your plans again because I really need you right now. Manipulative, sometimes, or they're in fight or flight and their brain has decided that you're the only safe person left on planet Earth. Lack of empathy, you tell them you had a shit day and they reply with their own worst story. Classic narcissist, scream the TikTok therapist. Or they're so flawed with their own stress that their empathy circuit is temporarily offline. We've all done the yeah but me though dance when we are running on fumes. Envy and arrogance. They roll their eyes at your friends' holiday photos and mutter, must be nice. Petty. For sure, but also perhaps they're staring down the barrel of their own stagnating life while everybody else seems to be winning on Instagram. See what I mean? That calm, reasonably self-aware partner you once knew can start sounding suspiciously like they've swallowed the entire narcissist checklist overnight. It doesn't make the behaviour okay. It doesn't mean you have to smell sweetly and put up with it indefinitely. But it does explain why so many of us end up diagnosing our other half instead of noticing that we're both quietly running on empty or worse. Stress has this sneaky talent for amplifying the very traits that make relationships feel impossible. Sleep deprivation, financial strain, grief, burnout, hormonal shifts, or just the general chaos that life is a lot right now can turn ordinary humans into versions of themselves that look an awful lot like the internet's favourite villain. So the key differentiator isn't the checklist during the storm, it's whether this pattern is their baseline when things feel safe or whether it only shows up when the wheels start coming off. And that single distinction changes everything about what you do next. Oh, and no, your ex being a dick in Tesco's during lockdown does not count as early adulthood onset. One of the first questions I always ask in response to they're a narcissist statement is, did they behave like this before this stressful or traumatic period? Can you point to long stretches when they didn't act this way? Because under threat, the human brain doesn't go, time to be my most evolved self. It goes full caveman, more self-protecting, more controlling, more defensive, more blamey, and way more emotionally immature. And suddenly your calm, reasonably self-aware partner does start sounding like the walking DSM checklist, and it does not make it okay. It does not mean you have to tolerate it forever, but it does explain why so many people are out here diagnosing their other half instead of noticing that they're both running on empty. And here's the most important bit that nobody on TikToks tell you. When somebody looks like they fit, a psychologist still has to do a differential diagnosis, meaning what else could this be? Because human behavior is messy. And because labeling somebody based on your worst moments with them is not a diagnosis, it's a story. And FYI, subjective opinions aren't facts, and labels create traps. When you label someone, you don't just describe them, you shape what you expect from them. And that's the Pygmalion effect, aka self-fulfilling prophecy in real life. You expect narcissistic behavior, you interpret everything through that lens, you respond defensively, they respond defensively, and the relationship comes the label. And now both of you are trapped. And an important thing to note before we move on, nuance is not a permission slip for you to say in harm. So if you're being manipulated, ridiculed, psychologically abused, physically abused, or threatened, your job is not to diagnose them. Your job is to protect yourself. It is not your job to fix them. It is not your job to heal their trauma. And it most definitely is not your job to love them through it. If something criminal is happening, seek the right support and report it. And here's a test that doesn't require a diagnosis. It's simple and it's revealing. Set a small boundary, not a dramatic ultimatum, a micro boundary. So for example, no, I'm not available for that. I'm going to head off now. That doesn't work for me. I'll think about that and I'll let you know. Then just watch. A healthy person might be disappointed, but they can tolerate it. A person operating from entitlement, control, emotional extraction will often escalate, guilt trip, punish, sulk, flip into blame, or make you responsible for their feelings. And that tells you what you need to know. Not what they are, but what they do. And if you're the kind of human who panics when you set a boundary, here are a few scripts that you can steal. Script number 1, the clean no. No, I am not doing that. Or no, I am not available. Script number 2, the delay. So no instant soothing. I'm not answering this right now. I'll reply later. Or I need time to think. I'm going to come back to you. Script number 3, the pattern boundary. If you raise your voice, I'm ending the conversation. Or if you insult me, I'm leaving. Script number 4, the non-negotiable exit. This isn't working for me. I'm done talking about it. Or I'm not staying in this conversation. Say it once, then stop. And here's how to handle somebody with narcissistic patterns without becoming one yourself. So first up, keep it simple and keep it safe. So 1, stop jading, which thankfully is not suggesting you're the latest superhero and you need to give up your secret identity. It's a plain old boring acronym, but trust me, it's useful. Also, FYI, my planting that superhero thought in your mind means you're a lot more likely to remember it when you need it. Don't justify, argue, defend, or explain your way into exhaustion. Keep your sentences short, non-emotional, and to the point. So the complete opposite of what you find in these podcast episodes. Number 2, boundaries with consequences, not vibes. Boundaries, a great old technique which works wonders, but somehow seems like you're being impolite, especially if you're British. So please remember, you're not a mat. Houses have doors. Emotional boundaries are the same. They're just designed to keep you safe and sane. So a boundary isn't something like, I don't like that. A boundary is a firm, confident and specific, such as if X happens, I will do Y. And then you do it every single time, no matter what. Number 3, grey rock when appropriate. And if you've never heard of this, it's kind of like you become a grey rock, super uninteresting and immovable in all your rocky awesomeness. Now, if somebody feeds on reaction, just don't give them the buffet. Have a neutral tone, minimal detail, no emotional performance. Number 4, name the pattern, not the person. As a reminder, we're all dicks sometimes, and roughly 5% of the population is clinically diagnosed with NPD. So it's time to focus on patterns, not labels. So when you're both in a calm and chill state, set this boundary up. Please don't do it mid-argument. And if you do, please don't drop my name in it. I get enough internet-based harassment as it is. So give them a heads up with something like, when you shout, I'm going to end the conversation. Then make sure you follow through. From this day forward, promise you'll not randomly word vomit things like, you're a narcissist. And number 5, choose distance over debate. And finally, one of my faves, because you don't need to win the argument, you just need to stop bleeding energy. And the uncomfortable truth that focusing on them is an avoidance trap. If you spend your days analysing why they do X, Y, Z, you're probably avoiding a much scarier question. Why do I keep abandoning myself? Focusing on this question, that's the real work. You're not too sensitive. You're just human. And you don't need to diagnose them. You need to focus on yourself. You only have a responsibility to you. If you keep ending up in the same dynamic, it's not bad luck. It's just patterning. Your wiring decides what you tolerate, how you respond under stress, and what you mistake for love. And if you want to understand your pattern and how to change it, take the Happiness Archetypes test. It'll show you what's driving your stress responses and what to do instead. It's completely free and you can access it right now. Links in the description below.